Hey friends, welcome to Play Dead Studios, Robin Black YouTube channel. My friend Mark Manoharan behind there. My friends here, if you are watching this on our YouTube channel, my friends here are live on Periscope. Follow me on Periscope if you want to watch some of this stuff live. We will be live on YouTube soon. If you're on SoundCloud or iTunes, thank you for sharing ideas on your drive to work or wherever you are. It's fucking cool. Well, Mayweather versus McGregor. What is it? What is this? What the fuck are we seeing? What's happening? What is it? On the surface, this is my second layer. It's an onion. I'm peeling back different layers all the way through to the fight, or at least until I go to Vegas the week of the fight. Further and further. Why am I doing this? I have a deep, deep love of the martial arts. Like, it can't be healthy. Those close to me think that I'm overly obsessed. I mean, clearly loving something or admiring something or studying something enough to learn lessons in your life has some value, but doing too much of something, maybe it's damaging. I don't know, but I love it. And I love it because the deeper that you look into it, there's more and more things to see. There's things to learn. And the nature of this fight, because it's so far out, it's so off the beaten track, it's so random seeming, rather than, a phenomenon that I've observed is rather than being able to examine it from every angle, a lot of people are so uncomfortable with it or dislike it or feel a visceral reaction to it that they want to shut it down, want to shut down discussion. And that happens a lot. Last week, I examined some layers of this fight. And I started by saying that as I wander through the world, it's very cool when people I don't know are like, hey, there's that MMA guy. Hey, it happened twice already today. And a very common one I get, hey, bro, does McGregor have a chance? I'll say yes. They'll go, come on, man. He doesn't even know how to box. Okay, that is one of the doorways, the doors that get slammed. Gets slammed, no more discussion. He doesn't know how to box. It's over. We can't talk about it anymore. The other is this sort of visceral, this is a farce, makes me uncomfortable. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm angry. I will watch it, but it makes me angry. That shuts the door there. Then there's others. Obviously, this guy, if you do go further, they're like, come on, man. This guy's just in it for the money. You know, we want to make this thing. He's going to make a bunch of money. He'll go in and give it a try. When he loses, no big deal. He's rich. If you do explain to them that you've studied McGregor's personality and people close to him with half a decade of your life, and that's not true. That is not true. Anybody who knows Conor McGregor knows that's not true. He's not going to just give it a go and it's cool, I'm rich now. Never. He's there to win. He believes he's going to win. Then the next layer that you get is people say, well, then he's delusional. When you try to go in and ask them why, they come up with some nebulous answer of boxing. And I realized there that was our barrier. So most people don't know what this thing we call boxing actually is. They just know this guy does it, and this guy they think doesn't do it. And it is a collection of choices, skills, movements, ideas, beliefs, training rituals. It's a collection of all of these things. That's what boxing is. So last week, I'm going to give you 3 concepts this week. Quickly, I'm going to touch on last week. If you haven't seen it already, I'm super cool. If you press pause, go back and check it out if this is of interest to you. You also might check out last week and go, this guy's out of his fucking mind. I just wanted to know who's got faster hands. I'm out. And that's cool. Everything isn't for everybody. We're all different. But last week I had 3 concepts. The first one was that the world changes constantly. And for some reason, in the 1940s, you could look at the 1910s and go, those guys didn't know anything about, sailing. We know now. It wouldn't occur to them that in the 1970s, people would look at the 40s and go, those guys didn't know anything about sailing. A lot of us in life, rather than recognize that we are in a constantly moving and changing environment, we see the past as something that was constantly changing, but this is stable. And we just know that's not true. That in fact, if you look at VR right now, and I say to you, VR in 2040 will make this VR look ridiculous, you'd be like, oh yeah, probably will, based on VR to Atari to Pong, etc. I drew in the idea that everything is like that, and that boxing is also like that. Boxing is ever changing, ever improving, and at any time what we think is the best, oh my God, Floyd is the best, is just a moment in time. It's not a defined destination, it's just ever changing. So that was one. The second one was disruptions never happen from within. Airbnb should have been invented by Marriott Hotels, but it wasn't, because Marriott Hotels is so far up its own micro, tangled up in spreadsheets and payroll and balance sheets and, you know, and shipping and advertising. It's so tangled up in all of that that seems so important that from the outside, somebody's like, I don't know much about that stuff, but let me tell you, this is what they're doing wrong when you take a 30,000-foot view. That's what disruption is. We talked about Napster disrupting the music business. We talked about Uber disrupting taxi, my very favorite disruption of all time, by the way. I like to reference it incessantly. And then the third one was that something Bruce Lee said, and many others, that the individual is always more powerful than the institution or the belief system or the style. Okay, so we talked about those. Now, very quickly, somebody mentioned X factor. For me, when we use regression analysis, something I talked about with Brendan Schaub, and we say, we wake up and our result, regression analysis means take the result and work our way backwards and find the equation. Result is Sunday morning, Conor McGregor somehow beat Floyd Mayweather, and we regress it back. Conor's skills, Conor's speed, Conor's experience, et cetera, et cetera. We add it all up. It doesn't equal Conor wins on Sunday morning. To which Brendan, my friend, was like, well, that's the X factor. I'm like, well, I want to know what the X factor is. I'm not happy limiting us with the language. Now we have a word for it, so therefore I don't have to figure it out. I'm not happy with that. In fact, most of what drives me and why this YouTube channel exists, why Mark and I get together and sit here, is because I won't accept that. And some of you, 17,000 people subscribe to our YouTube channel in a couple of months. Some of you won't either. But you don't have the time to go dig through crazy, weird shit looking for explanations. So I'm so thrilled you come to me for that. And I'll try my best not to let you down. Okay, so those were the three things we explored. And I'm nothing if not open-minded to finding where the flaws are. Okay? The one that a lot of people accept is that disruptions never come from within. When you look at mass disruptions, changes in the status quo, they so often come from outside. And even outside can mean any number of things. It doesn't mean, outside completely, outside beliefs. If there will be people in MMA change MMA, but they'll come from an outside source, a new coach or a new arena of thinking or new ideas. Stephen Thompson disrupted MMA. Came from karate. He was still in the UFC when he did it, yes. Conor McGregor did it in MMA. He disrupted MMA. Yes, he was in the UFC when he did it, but he did it with a coach that wasn't one of the big coaches. He did it with a type of thinking that wasn't the same thinking that they all did. So disruptions never come from within. How you interpret that, that's up to you, but they don't. They never come from somebody deep in at the front. I got a lot of pushback from friends and other people. I wanted to talk to smart people. I wanted to talk to people who are in boxing and fighting, and I did all week long. And some people would push back. I was surprised when I talked about how things are ever changing and ever improving. And some people would be like, yeah, bro, but, and I say, bro, I don't always mean it to mean that they're stupid. I'm sorry if it comes off that way. Bro is something that smart people use too, and friends use, and it's just, it's a habit. I throw it in there. And they'll be like, yeah, bro, but, you know, when you think about it, there are some boxers back then that are better than boxers now. And I'll be like, well, what do you mean? They'll be like, or Wayne Gretzky could be better than some hockey players now. To which now we'll carry on that conversation. If we agree that Wayne Gretzky is better, then let's say 1985, Wayne Gretzky, I'm just saying it, maybe it's 83, maybe it's 87, I don't know. Let's say 1985, Wayne Gretzky, 84, Wayne Gretzky's better than people now. Does that mean everybody in 1984? No. In fact, we agree all of them aren't. Bobby Orr was, Wayne Gretzky was, one other guy was. But the other 20,000 and 40,000 coming up and 100,000 kids and all the coaches, they weren't. Okay? So that actually proves my third point. The individual is more powerful and more important than the style or the system. The fact that there are exceptions to boxing is always improving, singing is always improving, medicine is always improving, technology, communication, that there are individual exceptions proves that the individual can be more powerful than the system or the institution. But it also raised in me some new questions. So if it's not just getting better and there are some changes, what could those people be doing? Is Wayne Gretzky, was he just a superhero? Is he a mutant? If we say, Joe Louis was better, or somebody, anyone, Michael Jordan, was Michael Jordan a mutant? Was he from outer space? Was he just proving that some individual can be more powerful than the system? Or is something else at play? So that brought those things, started the next layer. The next three concepts that we want to explore this week. 3 new concepts through which to look at McGregor versus Mayweather. Now, before I give you the 3 concepts, I'm going to give you 3. Before I give you 3, I want to say that this isn't, if you watch my Chris Weidman analysis, or any of mine over the last year, you know that I don't think that analysis itself, which is constantly changing, is just a comparison of whatever things we know. Who's got better footwork? Who's got better head movement? Who's got better hand speed? Who has the reach advantage? What does this guy do against the southpaw? In MMA, how's his takedown defense? To me, that's not analysis. That was analysis 4 years ago. I don't do that anymore because everybody does it. Everybody at home does it. You don't need me. You don't need me to tell you, that Conor McGregor is bigger or stronger. He's got a powerful left hand. He plays with range, different timing. It's nonsense. Every fucking bar owner, sitting there with 6 guys on the stool having this conversation. The only difference between that guy and Brendan or me or whatever is we do this through a lot of the day, but it's the same shit. It's meaningless. The next layers are what matters. And why do they matter? First of all, analysis is in and of itself. And I'm not talking MMA analysis for a second. We analyze wine or we analyze earthquakes or whatever. Analysis isn't taking what is known and running it through that filter. Analysis is expanding the analysis, explaining how and why these things happen. Floyd's got better boxing. Fuck, I guess we're done. End of conversation. Oh, okay, sorry. Don't be so dramatic, Robin. Well, he's just got faster hand speed. Okay, then we're done. Fucking faster hand speed. No, it's not that. There's other things happening. And so that's what last week's conversation was about. I have a subtext, sub-issue, sub-conversation constantly going where my frustration about the fact that analysis is in and of itself 5 years behind, and as a result, the audience, the older aging audience is, and the younger audience is not interested because they're fast changing, fast thinking, trying to learn new things, trying to interpret the world in a new way, and they don't care that their dad watches football this way, or they don't care that their dad liked, how the UFC walkout happens. They're different. So this frustration is constantly there for me. I'm trying not to let it color me all the time. But so our three concepts this week that we want to look at, taking what we took, taking what we learned, taking the ideas that we put out of disruption, of change, of constant change, of our improper belief that we are somewhere, this is the best, therefore that's it. Not accepting that in 10 years, this will look rudimentary. The three new lenses I want to look at this week are Polynesian navigators, crushing the fastball in baseball, and Liam and Noel Gallagher from Oasis. So those are the three lenses I want to bring to Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. Okay? The Polynesian navigators from 2,000 years BC, how one crushes a fastball, and Liam and Noel Gallagher from Oasis. Okay, those are our three lenses. And I'll try to explain to you why, and maybe I'm insane. I don't know. But so first off, before I get to the Polynesian navigators, we pause and we look at the world that we live in. This is the only world that we live in, so we think it's all there is. We think the way that we interface with the world, with each other, with business, is what it is to be human. But it isn't. This isn't us. This is a culture we've created. Okay? So, and it's a culture that values rational thought. Now, you might say to yourself, of course it does, because the opposite of that is irrational. But our valuing of rationality is why we've created this belief or this tone that irrationality is bad. Okay? So we live in a world where power, a world of politics, where power, influence, money, structure, winning, all of these things are created through rational thought. Okay? And that is a particular area of our brain. If A, then B. If Chuck Liddell can keep it standing, Chuck Liddell will win. If we believe this, then this will happen. We have created such a value on rational thought as if it is the only thing. And science, philosophy, psychology, they'll all tell you it isn't. That there are two streams of consciousness, always happening. And the other is intuition. And we don't celebrate intuition in our culture. Intuition isn't used in most of our day-to-day structure of our world. That doesn't mean it's not there, and it doesn't mean it isn't what it is to be human. It just means the culture that we've lived in has overvalued one, so we built a world around it, and slowly undervalued the other, and the world of rationality is making so much noise that it's shutting down our intuition, okay? So you get a job, then you buy a house with a mortgage, the interest rate is this, but if it goes down, this happens, so you make that much more money. Then you get a lawyer, which prevents this thing from happening as your marriage license. Over here, you get the car, with that car, you get insurance, you drive to this thing, the red light says, it's all rational thought. And we believe, even as I'm saying this, some people are, well, it's official, Robin Black's fucking lost his mind. He was gonna talk about Mayweather versus McGregor, and now he's saying the world isn't the world. But it's just how we're seeing it. It's just what we're interpreting. It's just the culture we've built. It's just what's happening. And it's not all there is. I'm going to quickly read for you a couple of thinkers before I take you to the Polynesian navigators that I promised you. Okay? The difference between, so this is just a writer who has studied Anne Lamott. Bird by Bird is one of her books. It's a very popular book. You get your intuition back when you make space for it. When you stop the clattering of the rational mind. The rational mind doesn't nourish you. You assume that it gives you the truth because the rational mind is the golden calf that this culture worships. But this is not true. Rationality squeezes out much that is rich and juicy and fascinating. Okay, I'm going to give you a few other quotes, but I want to just touch on something quickly. Every one of us has gone out to a cottage. Every one of us has sat by the water, Why is going on a hike so popular? Why does fucking Joe go bow hunting? Why do so many people that we know do that, go camping in the summer or move out of the city? It's because when you escape all of that noise, you start to interface with the rest of the world. Intuition, we've created this idea that it is some weird thing that old women have. It's not. It's a secondary flow of our mind, a second stream. Scientifically speaking, how our brain actually works, this is true. It is using all of our senses, the 5 that we talk about, and we have many more senses that are not popular, but just Google human sense and you'll see them. Many of which apply in great detail to fighting. Awareness of where you are in space, awareness of interpretation of time, pressure. These are all senses. We gather the information from all of these senses, and our subconscious catalogs it for our future protection. It's an evolutionary skill. At one time, we were way more in use of that area of our brain than the society that we've built. And the society that we've built is rapidly squishing this away, devaluing it, and leaving very little time for our brains to do it, which is why meditation is so popular right now, which is why hiking is so popular right now, going out, all of these things, okay? I'm going to give you one of the great minds ever, Albert Einstein. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. Okay? Albert Einstein isn't some fucking dummy. I know you might disagree, and I know this is part of our culture, and it's part of the nature of the culture that we've built, that you could be a 15-year-old kid right now and go, fuck, that's ridiculous. Albert Einstein's smarter than you. Please accept that. If you cannot accept the simple truth that Albert Einstein is smarter than you, then I'm sorry, I don't think I can be of any service to you at all here. Okay? So let's start with that. Albert Einstein, smarter than you. And me, obviously. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift. The rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. That's where we live. That's the world that we live in. That's law, that's structure, that's your executive position, that's the bank, that is the street, that's the street light, that's fucking jean, no tuck Tuesday, that's denim Friday, that's, McRibs, it's all that. And last, before we get into concept number 1, the Polynesian navigators, Steve Jobs. And he references other cultures. The people in the Indian countryside don't use their intellect like we do. They use their intuition instead. And the intuition is far more developed than in the rest of the world. Intuition is a very powerful thing, more powerful than intellect, in his opinion. That's had a big impact on my work. Western rational thought is not an innate human characteristic. It is learned, and it is the great achievement of Western civilization. But in the villages of India, these villages he's speaking of, they never learned it. They learned something else, which in some ways just as valuable, but in other ways not. That's the power of intuition and experiential wisdom, okay? Why the fuck am I talking about all this? This is how we think. This is what it is to be human. These are areas of our brain we've repressed. Culturally, educationally, nobody teaches you about this when you're in grade 6. Our entire society values rational thought so powerfully. We built a world around it that most of us, many of us, almost all of us have repressed this other powerful, very real part of the human experience, which is intuition. Before I get on, okay, so now let's talk about these. Let's talk about these Polynesian navigators. Concept number 1, McGregor versus Mayweather. So 3, 4, 5,000 years ago, the Polynesians in the South Pacific got on boats and traveled thousands of miles on homemade boats when they needed to go to another island for resources or something happened to their island or just to explore. They did it without tools. Later on, there were rudimentary tools. They did it without maps. Later on, there were sticks. But they did it by developing very true, real skills of intuition. So if you and I go sailing out tomorrow, we don't have a fucking clue where we're going. They spent generations, and it became part of their shared consciousness, to be able to interpret the shapes of waves, what a cloud and the color of the sky meant about 20 miles or 40 miles, the weather there, what chop meant to the depth, what the paths of birds meant, wind, feeling, color, all of this. They gathered that information into their subconscious, and they became one with it to the point, these are humans just like us. Doesn't matter that it's a few thousand years ago. Please don't think that our brains became shittier or that we devolved. It's still there. The ability to then go and for generations take that without writing, without maps, without recording it, and pass it on to the children. Pass that information on, that you could go sailing out 600 miles to a tiny island with no map, using where the sun, the stars, the birds, the size and color and shape, mobility of the waves, the color of the clouds, all of that. Humans did that when they weren't texting. Humans did that when they weren't checking their email. Humans did that when they didn't try to figure out what the, interest rate on their fucking maturing loan was. That's what they did. That's what we did. We have that ability. Our brains do that. They gather this information from all of their senses simultaneously and synthesize it into a usable, interpretable, readable, and actionable information. And that's all there, our nervous system protecting ourselves, gathering this thing for these emergency situations that we could use it. Floyd Mayweather is not the greatest boxer in the world. It isn't because of how he punches, it's because of this. This is what his fucking brain does. And this is what Chris Weidman's brain did the other day. And this is what is happening in fighting. They are immersed in the ocean of the battle. They're reading the waves and they're reading the clouds. They're reading the storms. They're anticipating the storm to come. They're feeling the smell and the nerves and the breath and all of that. All of that data is being gathered. They're not managing the range. They're not breaking someone's rhythm. These are words we use to describe it, okay? Humans do this, we do it. And when we watch somebody flip a motorcycle, or we watch Floyd Mayweather be brilliant, or we watch Beyonce slay everybody, this is what we're watching. Do you understand that? There's no rational thought in Chris Weidman versus Vitor Belfort. There's no rational thought in John Jones versus DC. There are times that it feels like a thought or a choice or a read and an interpretation and an action. There are times that it's just rock, paper, scissors. I do this and you do this, and that's what happens. But they're feeling these fights. These fights are felt. And that's what Floyd Mayweather is good at. And yet everybody tried to beat him by being a better boxer. Oh, maybe if I train my right hand different. He's not winning because his boxing is so skilled. His brain, his sensitivity, his intuition, that's what's trained. And that's what McGregor's gonna fight him with. Who gives a fuck about boxing? Boxing's not even a real thing. Do you understand when I look at boxing experts and I'm trying to explain to them what fighting is? And they're like, bro, this guy's left hook is too good. Go fuck yourself. You don't understand combat because you've sat there using the rational mind constantly over and over again for decades or 100 years. These boxing experts rationalize the intuitive and trained and reactionary and habits and expressions and artistic moments of artistic geniuses. And these fucking assholes are talking to me about head movement and footwork, and fuck off. You're trying to tell me that this guy can't win because boxing. There's no such thing as boxing. Any more than saying these Polynesian navigators can't win because motorboat. There's no fucking such thing as a motorboat. It's just a boat. And this is just combat. And if you think that these Polynesian navigators, they could go 1,000 miles. And when they went 1,000 miles, they had hundreds, maybe thousands of things to interpret, process, deal with. And then there's a storm. And then there's sharks, and then there's, no wind, and then they ran out of, they lost something to fish, all of these things. And if you don't think that it's easier for them to just go 10 miles instead of 1,000 to that island when there's no storm, because Conor McGregor, when he fights in MMA, deals with 1,000 miles of a storm. And when he boxes, as if boxing's actually a thing, as if that means anything. It doesn't fucking mean anything. It's a collection of rules that structure you can do whatever you want within them. And instead, people think, well, boxing is a jab, a hook. It is whatever the fuck you want it to be. And in these moments of true intuitive expression, if I'm normally throwing this, but in that moment of creativity, I do something different, there's no such thing as boxing. And I know, like, someone on some boxing website somewhere quotes, look at this dummy, he doesn't even think boxing's real. You're the fucking dummy because you think it is. You're so limited. You've limited your thinking. Someone gave you a word and that's the end? This is the mind. This is how the humans express themselves. Conor McGregor does it. When he fights, he has 1,000 things to catalog and read and interpret. And he's been training the intuitive mind to deal with all of them. And now he's got half a fight. If you don't think that's of value, if you don't think that is of value, that training his intuition to deal with more, longer trips across the Pacific, more variables, and now all I got to do is this. The only part my intuitive mind, the only part my creative mind, the only part my physical expression has to deal with is this smaller collection of things. These idiots call it boxing. I just call it a smaller collection of variables. Fuck. Can you imagine how fucking frustrating it must be to examine things on this level, and then the world doesn't, I talk to so-called experts in boxing. They literally don't know anything about how it actually works. Well, this guy's got sharper this, and his head movement is on this thing. Those are fucking words, and I'll explain to you why they think that way, and I'll explain to you why commentary is done the way it is, and I'll explain to you why we pick winners in fights, and people need, producers tell you, well, you got to pick a winner and you have to choose a side and then you have to defend it. It's because there's the nature. And let me read you another thing. I got another thing here about intuition versus rational thinking, which is interesting. And the stuff that I'm bringing up, I just read and research and then triple check it. This is all on fucking Wikipedia. All you have to do is be willing to really look deeper. And you can do it in anything. My car is really fast. How does it work? Oh, how did that work? Where did that piece get made? Who researched that? Fuck. Like, instead of whatever it is we often do, we have the choice to just go down these rabbit holes whenever we want. It's all there. Just be open-minded. Intuitive versus rational thinking. So please bear with me. Okay. Rational thinking is most appropriate when a life situation has presented all the facts and there's a clear understanding of the consequences of a word or deed. No ambiguity or unknown. The rational mind can clearly say, if A, then B. If he's a boxer and he's not, he wins. Because the world has a certain order and predictability, the rational mind can make reasoned decisions founded on this trust of external order and predictability. However, when faced with the unknowable, the rational mind refuses to let go. It struggles to rationalize an action by seeking more and more information that might help us in making a decision based on the facts that it gathers, denying that the consequences of our action is, by definition of the circumstances, truly unknowable. He's a better boxer. He's a better grappler. If he keeps it on the feet, he'll win. Wait a second, the grappler won. You know, why don't you pick who's going to win? It's unknowable. Once you allow your intuitive mind to let you be part of the fight, to let you feel the fight, to let you feel the artist, the way you feel music, you don't feel this need to rationalize it. You don't feel this need to say, oh, this guy's going to win. 52% of the time you're right, and I don't give a fuck either way. And neither should you. You want to let your intuitive mind gather this stuff, drip in it, and learn something from it. So intuitive thinking is most appropriate when the consequences of our words and actions are unknown. There's nothing that the rational mind can grasp hold of because the results of our actions is unknowable. When faced with the unknown consequences of a decision, intuitive thinking relies on the feeling. It is a feeling that your subconscious has gathered the necessary information. You have to accept that. But your subconscious has. You meet somebody and you go to hire 3 different people and all their resumes are identical. And in fact, they all give the same answers, but you know one of them's more trustworthy. That's intuition. Don't disregard that. We exist because of that. We knew not to eat that rotten food when we were traveling across the plains of Africa. We knew that that cave over there might contain a saber-toothed whatever. Intuition is what it is to be human. Feelings are scary, muddled, and confusing. When the rational mind can come to a sound conclusion by gathering the facts and an external process, the intuitive mind must make an inner journey, become vulnerable and open to insights whose conclusions rest on an inner sense of trust. So much of what we're seeing when we watch and we talk about fighting, we just go further and further down that. Once upon a time, this guy's got better grappling, this guy's got better wrestling, this guy's got better striking. Then you explore it. BJJ Scout, Jack Slack, Lawrence Kenshin, myself, 2013, 2012, we started exploring that. We didn't intend distance management, head movement, mobility, timing, feints to be comparative locks. That's rational thinking. That only holds up so far when you say, oh, and he slipped out here, and as he stood, this happened. You're not telling the story. The story is, how do they train this ability to do that, to improvise, to innovate, to be intuitive, to allow all of their senses to let them train, fight, and win moments, circumstances, skirmishes, and fights. And that's what Conor McGregor trains. And that's what he's bringing to this fight. We could call it something else. We could call it battle of intuition. We can call it martial expression. But don't fucking call it boxing. Because there's no such thing as boxing. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as karate either, for that matter, or wrestling. These are limiting concepts developed to shoehorn a bunch of smaller ideas and exclude others in a free-form fighting. And once you exclude kicking and elbowing and so forth, and you put your blinders on, whatever you're calling boxing existed without any of that. Does that mean, well, if Conor can't kick or elbow or punch, they're irrelevant? No, because the act of kicking, elbowing, punching, choking, grappling, moving away, stopping a kick, etc., all of those things gave you a greater understanding of where you are in space and where he is, and how to move your body, and how to control your weapons, and how to control your mind, and how to express combat. And it gave you a better awareness of so many things, so many spinning plates that you had to spin like one of those acrobats. So many of them piled up everywhere. And now, this thing these idiots have shoehorned and compartmentalized as if it's only one thing. Now all you got to do is spin like 7 plates instead of 70. And all of that training, understanding, concentration, awareness, self-awareness, proprioception, distance, all of these attributes now can all be focused on a much smaller menu of issues. This guy can only do these things. In fact, he only knows these things. In fact, he doesn't even understand the way to interact and interface with the world if there weren't these things, which I do. And even though I can't kick, the fact that I moved in ways that allowed me to kick made me understand my body more. All of that is real. All of that is real. And when you go back to the Polynesian navigators, you see it's real. They did that. They did it. They didn't have navigational tools. They didn't have the things we have today. They passed it down. Last thing before we move on. I know this is going on forever. I don't know if you can see this, if you are on iTunes or SoundCloud, but Mark, that's good. You can see that, okay? What we're looking at is the 2 hemispheres of the brain. Now, what people call the left brain is where we live. Now, it's slightly more complicated than this, but this is accepted science, and you don't have to look very far. The left hemisphere is responsible for writing and language, science, math, lists like, who's in the top 10? Who's next? What's next for this guy? Logic. If he wins, he should get the title shot. Linear thinking. That's what's in the left. That's what our left brains do. We live there. Our society lives there. Our culture lives in our left brains. I'll quickly show it here for my friends on Periscope. If you are on SoundCloud or iTunes, I've drawn a brain, and on the left side, I've listed all the things that our society has valued and built. Linear thinking. Now, if we live in that, on the right side, quickly, emotional expression, spatial awareness, music, creativity, imagination, dimension, and gestalt. Gestalt meaning the big picture, the overall picture, okay? I'm going to take another look at it. If you're listening on our podcast, on the left side of the brain, science, math, structure, rational thinking, the world we live in. And on the right side, spatial awareness. Stephen Thompson, Conor McGregor, spatial awareness. That's what they do. They're manipulating the space between you and them and the movement between you and them. Creativity. It's in the right hemisphere of the brain. Dimension. Also, on the left side is the ego, which is you. And on the right side is the sense of self, which is how you relate to the world. Your ego, your need to have a list. This guy is going to be next for the title shot. This is the top 10. I need to see. Your math, well, he steps out of this angle and this timing did this. And language. We can only explain these things. I'll take one moment here and take a moment and think about an idea or a concept or a feeling that you don't have a word for. Go. One more time. Think of a feeling or a concept that you don't have words for. Go. If you can't do it, and most people can't, It's because we're stuck in the left hemisphere. Our language, our need for language, our way that we read with language stops us from thinking in these ways. So if you fucking call it boxing, you can't think about what it really is. It's boxing, he's better. Well, you just fucking left hemisphered yourself into a corner. You can't think of the things I'm talking to you about. If you're willing to, this all sounds a bit crazy, but this is just science. You don't have to look far. You don't have to Google. You don't have to look far. You can look. I mean, my friend David Klonsky, a professor of psychology at the University of British Columbia, who's been a great help to me. My friend Tracy Trudeau, who in Edmonton is a psychology PhD, as well as David Mullins. If you want, ask in the questions or in the notes below, and they will tell you where you can find the references of this research or research like it, or follow them on Twitter, and they'll help you out. Or Dr. Joel, who's another psychologist we've worked with here. We've worked with 3 PhD psychologists, slowly trying our best to learn this as best we can. And they monitored it to say, yeah, Robin, you are crazy, but this is accurate, okay? This is accurate. You can't, the connection of language to that side of the brain doesn't allow us or hinders us from thinking experimentally, intuitively, exploratively, improvisationally, okay? It does. So you start thinking over here. One last thing I'm going to say about this before we move on to concept number 2 is the right brain thinking, spatial awareness, music, creativity. By the way, you know how the Polynesian navigators passed down this information for over generations, for 1,000 years? Songs. Can you fucking imagine that? They could navigate 1,000 miles into the ocean using wind and clouds and the size and rhythm of waves and birds, and they pass that information on using songs, because that part of the brain, the intuitive part of the brain, our intuition, a real part of us that is completely repressed in our society because it thinks that way. Put music on. I've been doing it for a long time. It's beautiful. Put music on, classical music or jazz or something when you watch fights. It's beautiful because the language is limiting us right now. But one last thought. So we agree that the right side of the brain is this creativity. This is how you have to beat Mayweather. And if you're equal here, he's got the better skills. Those things, those abilities, the expressions he's got, and we'll talk about them more in the second thing. But this, all of this, it also controls the left hand. Do you know that? The right side of the brain controls the left hand. So if you're looking at this, this is right, Mark? This, you see the right here? Yeah. It controls the left hand, the right side of the brain. Conor's left-handed. Does that mean every left-handed person is more creative, has better spatial awareness? I don't know. But it's connected. It's real. That's real. That's fucking science. I didn't make that shit up. The right brain thinking, creativity, innovation, spatial awareness, rhythm, music, connects the left hand. So you make of that what you will. Please pass on more information to me about it's real science, only real science, about left-handed people and the right side of the brain. But so that's concept number 1. As we're sitting around looking at, well, this guy boxes and this guy doesn't. This is what's happening in creative endeavors. We move on to number 2, hitting the fastball. Okay? Let's say 1900. Obviously, the fastball is much slower because we also haven't improved the efficiency of the pitcher, but we got to hit the fastball. Fastball's coming in, we got to hit it. Sorry, if you're listening, this is iced coffee, and it is delicious, and it's really hot in here. Fastball's coming in, we got to hit it. Many things are happening. We're watching it. These things are never without connection to us. When they happen in a batting cage or when nobody's watching, they are different than how they happen when we're all connected to it. That's another thing. That's a concept for another day, or a concept for part 3 here. Fastball comes in, we swing, sometimes we hit it. We don't know we don't understand it. It's 1900. He throws fast, we swing fast, we hit it. You ask that man to explain how he hit it, what happened, what he used. He'll say, at first, I've got a better swing, or I read it. I read him. I just knew he was throwing a fastball. They can't explain it. It's intuition. What is intuition? Is that just we just talked about it, but what is it? Some old woman, wives' tale? No, it's collecting all of the information and then using that information to take advanced action, okay? The fastball hitter did not understand what we understand today, that the speed with which his eye and mind can interpret the very first cues of the body and then chunking, that's what it's called. Again, I'm going on forever here, so I can't explain every concept, but Google chunking, it's fascinating, it applies to fighting. And he chunks it, that this means this, and then makes an anticipation as rapidly his brain fires information down to a path or a swing. There's no rational thought there. It's intuition. It's trained intuition. Now, over time, as we examine it, we start to understand it. So in the 60s, then the 70s, then the 80s, and more now than ever, we understand the fastball pitch. We understand what the eye of the hitter is doing, what his brain, how it is lit and ready to respond, the cue that he reads, and the chunking that has taken place so that he may, before the next millisecond or a few milliseconds takes place, his brain has read fairly correctly what is coming and made a choice for something, a pathway, a neural pathway that has been created in his mind and then grooves in his body and his physiological system to give him a particular swing. We understand that now. That has always been true. What we understand about hitting a fastball was true in 1900. We just didn't know it. That's what the brain was doing. That's what the body was doing. That's what the eyes were doing. That's always been true. There will be things that will be discovered in 2030 when we look back that are relevant to the way that McGregor is fighting, and Mayweather for that matter, that we will look back and go, wow, that's wild what they were doing. We didn't know it at the time. How were they able to do it when they didn't know it? They just gathered information using all of their senses, synthesized it, and then worked. They also, whether we're talking about Floyd Mayweather or the best hitter, repetition. Over and over and over again, slowly refining it, slowly becoming better. That hitter didn't understand. He was training his eyes' ability to pass the information, his brain's ability to read the chunking, his nervous system's ability to express it out to a pre-programmed neural pathway that had been built for that swing. He didn't understand that, but it was happening, right? Shit like that's happening in fighting right now. And I want to know what it is. That's what I'm doing here. That's where I'm going. That's what this study is for. That's why I'm bringing in scientists and neurologists and psychologists, because yes, we can't explain all this all the time. This is a small YouTube channel for only the high level, earliest of adopters. But if these ideas trickle down and we influence Brian Stan to use some of them, which we do, and he's always very kind and says so, and we influence Matt Serra, or we influence whoever, this is what it is to be on the front end of learning. I can't influence everybody, but I can influence the influencers, and I've been doing it for 5 years. So we look at that, and that's happening in fighting. We see it. We know it's there. We just don't know what it is yet. And if there's shit happening that we don't understand, you cannot rule it out. So if McGregor were to win, and on Monday morning, rational thought says, well, I guess Floyd Mayweather slowed down. I guess he's over the hill. Or I guess he got lucky. Or this happened. It's every single moment of every single fight, there is stuff we don't understand that we will understand better in 5 years and then 10 years and then 20 years, which is why we have to stop talking with such authority. It's curiosity. It's fascinating. We don't know. We don't know. And every time we talk like we do know, we limit people's willingness to explore the next thing. And this is what is the next thing. One other thought on the fastball. Once they did understand what it is, you can start to improve just those things. Instead of taking 250,000 swings to develop that, you could develop using other tools that don't damage your body, reaction time. You can train the speed your brain works. I was just in Montreal, and George St. Pierre, who's an awesome dude and just about killed me just in grappling, and he was being gentle. He was trying not to hurt me. He was being as kind as he could, and he's a very good training partner. He just about killed me. He does it. He's explored reaction time. He's explored improving his blind spot. So if a punch on most people gets through here, it doesn't get through on him. He's trained his ability to read and interpret information. He trains it. You'll see it when we release our TSN documentary. He's found the highest level person, highest level accepted science in how to train, read, interpretation, brain processing speed, and reaction time, and he trains it. And so do hitters. Once you understand what the thin slices are. One time it was like, well, you know, if our home run hitter has a hot girlfriend, it makes him better. They believed that. Or, you know, if he pulls his socks on one at always in the right order, it'll make him hit better. They believe that. And rituals to some degree, there have been proven to be the odd bit of truth in that, as weird as that sounds. But once you understand the reality, at least to this point, of what's happening, you can train it. So does Conor McGregor understand some things that those that came before him didn't understand? There's evidence that he does. And if he does, he's training them. And if he's training them, he's ready to disrupt combat. Which brings me, and I'll get more into it here, brings me to concept number 3. And if you're still with me, I fucking love you. Because there's no way you're still here unless you have as much deep curiosity for this beautiful art form. There's no way you're here without that. So thank you. You're a friend for life. I mean that. There's something, I understand you in ways that a lot of people don't. And you understand me in ways a lot of people don't. Thank you for being here with me. Third concept, Liam and Noel Gallagher from Oasis. If you don't know the band Oasis, welcome to your 20s. Cool to have you here. Cool to have a 18, 17-year-old or a 23-year-old here, or a 25-year-old for that matter. Oasis was a very successful British band in the 90s, mid to late 90s and early 2000s, who became the biggest band in the world at the time. So I needed a break from this. I've been deep in trying to understand and apply the study of intuition. Understand that this is a real aspect of our brains. That always has been. It's part of being human, and it's repressed by the society and culture that we built. How does that apply to Beyonce or Conor McGregor or Floyd Mayweather? If it does, and I know that it does, how do we explain that? If I explain that and somebody is like, bro, where's the breakdown? First of all, fuck off. I'm one of a handful of people that created breakdown. 2013, Google my name and the word breakdown and look elsewhere in the months before it and find 4 other people that ever used that term. Or other than the OGs, and I'm not bragging, this is historically correct. And maybe this is my ego, or maybe it's frustration. I don't know why. But I'm historically correct. I know that I've had an influence on this. And I know that this work that I'm doing right now, that's what it's intended for. I'm probably never going to get rich doing this. Those assholes at the UFC are probably never going to hire me to commentate, regardless of how much out front of things I am. Probably never. I'm realizing that now. I'm probably never going to get credit for some of the key concepts that I bring up? Probably never. And I think that does frustrate me a little, just as a person, just the human part of me, just the weak part of me. But I've also come to grips with it. My point here is not to get the big paying job and dumb it down. My point here is to explore this as deep and as far as it can possibly go and change some people's minds that this isn't violent, horrifying, dangerous, savage stuff. This is beautiful, fascinating, curious, incredible, artistic stuff. And that's my role. So I'm sorry. I guess a couple of weeks of getting lots of sleep and being really focused has maybe given me some frustration there. And maybe some of the frustration was realizing that chasing this idea of I want a job hired by these people, curated by these particular individuals, you start to shape the way that you send emails and how you do your job. And I don't want that. I realize I don't want that. I want to go further. But so anyways, this consumes me. And I want to get back to being consumed by this. The art and the study, not the job, not the getting the job, not the convincing a producer that, he should look at the innovative arc of fighting instead of the laggers at the back, or else our beloved UFC will keep going down because of the speed of change. The audience doesn't want the same thing. Anyways, instead of convincing of those people of those things, which is not noble or is not in line with what matters to me. What matters to me is exploring this. But regardless of those things all layering in, trying to figure out, left and right brain and Polynesian navigators and into how the fastball works and why people don't want to look at McGregor, and then balancing it with, I want this job and all of that, I've decided I'm going to shut my brain off and I'm just going to watch a documentary about music. The only thing is I couldn't shut my brain off, because as I started watching this beautiful documentary about music, it all just started tying in, because that's what obsession and that's what connection, deep, nonstop connection to something does. I'll tell you, those Polynesian navigators, when it rained, they didn't shut off navigation. They learned what they could learn from the rain. And that's where I live. I live in the ocean of fighting. I live in the ocean of fight analysis. I live in the ocean of what these things mean. So as I'm trying to turn it off unsuccessfully, and I'm watching the Gallagher, I'm watching Oasis, and I'm seeing their evolution. You see many of the same things that you see in a McGregor or in a fastball hitter. Practice, nonstop practice, drive, commitment, creation, 10,000 hours, all of these things. But what started to develop and I started to see, was the impact that they had on people, the influence that they had on the audience. And there were points at which 200,000 people, and you see them, and they are no longer 200,000 individuals. They're liquid, and they're moving, and they're influencing them. They've created this. And so you go back while you're looking at the brain, and you start to look at some of what is happening in the brain. And when you examine two people, even on a date sometimes, if they're really locked up, you see neural oscillations as you scan the brain. They're connecting. There's connections happening in between the two brains as they speak, sometimes as they look at each other, sometimes when they touch, sometimes unspoken. People can do that. It's very common, neural oscillations. And when it happens together, it's called neural synchrony. And it was something I talked about on Brendan's show, something that I'd been looking at with my friend Tracy Trudeau, the psychologist from Edmonton, online, is spontaneous interpersonal synchronization. So if I go to put high five, you will often high five. If I kick your leg, you'll often kick my leg. And that spontaneous interpersonal synchronization is what is happening when Liam Gallagher, Noel Gallagher, Oasis, Joe Rogan, I was at his comedy show. We all laughed at the exact same times. We all laughed together. Now your rational mind goes, well, that's because the joke was funny. But once you start thinking creatively, you're like, what is a joke? What is it? How did we interpret the words? Was it the tone? Was it the rhythm? Once you start to look at the world this way, you stop dismissing things. The joke was funny, bro. That's why we all laughed. What really happened and what's happening in our brain? It is a spontaneous interpersonal synchronization. There's lots of scientific study on this. 5 people go for a walk. Within X amount of time, all their steps are synchronized. Why would that be? It's a fluke? It's just something we do. No, there's a reason. Something happening with us. Something happening in us. So these aspects, if they're real, and science says they're real, they can be improved because everything can be improved. Once understood, can be explored, and can be trained, and can be studied, and can be improved. So Liam Gallagher is standing there, and they're all moving, and there's a if you Google it, simultaneous interpersonal synchronization, and then in quotes, rockin' to the beat. There's scientific study on why we all dance together when we hear rhythm. That's science. Ask yourself, look around, why is everybody dancing? Well, they wanted to dance. Why did they want to dance? Why and how? That's what analysis is. Why and how? Why are they dancing? And how are they all dancing the same? Well, it's the rhythm. But what's happening in their brain? Why did they do this? Rockin' to the beat, examined as a science. So all of this science is happening, all of this reality, this influence, human beings. Joe makes everybody laugh. The Car Theater holds, 2,000 or 3,000 people, 5,000, I don't know, it was big. I was at the front. That was really cool. Thanks, Joe. I had to get my cowboy Cerrone to get to my seat. He was wearing his cowboy hat. Everybody laughed, same points. Mark watches a lot of comedy. I don't go to a lot of comedy. I'm going to Brendan Schaub's show this week. It's got a comedy element. Excited about that. July 27th at the Phoenix. If you're watching this before that and you're in the Toronto area, come. I'll be there. Come say hi. But comedy does that. There's a science. There's something happening. How do they train it? Some of them train it. They tell jokes. It works. They tell more jokes. They get better at it. They don't know. Other ones study the rhythm and the timing and how it works and why it works. And you can study these things. And there it is, all happening. Rocking to the beat, 250,000 people. And there's Liam Gallagher. And there's just a little, he's just still. And there's a little voiceover and he says, I just loved the ultimate control, where I had 50 or 100,000 people all going crazy. And chaos, and I didn't join the chaos. I stayed still. I was calm in the chaos. He did that. And it's just a little moment in that documentary. That documentary is probably 2 hours. This is 20 seconds, but it jumps out. You see them all going crazy, and you see him calm. That's a skill. Skills can be trained. Skills can be used. Skills can give you advantages. They can be exploited. Conor McGregor has that skill. And if you can get 250,000 people and control them, make them work a certain way. Liam, incidentally, watched it, and then he said something along the lines of, but what you don't understand is we didn't do anything. They just did it. I think that's beautiful that he felt that, but he's wrong. They ran that. They created that. They influenced all of that. And is it the same thing to influence 250,000 people to dance, or 4,000 people in the Car Theater, or 2,000 or whatever? It's a lot of people. Nice theater. Or even Joe and his podcast, fucking 6 million people will watch it. Influence. 6 million. Or 250,000. It's wide. You've taken this influence, whatever it is, whatever is happening in the brain, whatever neural oscillations are taking place in the brain, and you've used it out wide. And obviously McGregor, with his 4 million Twitter followers and people hanging on his every word, and showing up all over to do it. He can do that. But what if you can narrow it down? What if you can focus it? What if you can focus it and use it on one person? There's evidence he's done that. Dustin Poirier couldn't explain it, why he felt the way he did. Jose Aldo couldn't explain it. Fights down and jumps out and he's unconscious. And Eddie Alvarez, the ultimate game day performer, the ultimate, maybe on a level with Mayweather, couldn't explain to you how and why. I love Eddie Alvarez. I cannot wait to see him fight. What's that guy's name? Gaethje? Gaethje. Are you serious? Sap Alvarez scale. Look it up. We're going to do one on Justin Gaethje and Eddie Alvarez. We're going to put them both through the Sap Alvarez scale. But Eddie Alvarez is the ultimate game day performer. There's a big old fucking brain on that guy. He is in so much control of himself and the situation, the balance between doing what he wants and being free. And that's a big part of fighting. It's something I wanted to ask Conor about when he was here, that balance between control and losing control. Eddie has always had that. And Conor, maybe he took what it is to control 250,000 people and fucking narrowed it right down on Eddie. Is that a thing? I don't know. You fucking can't tell me it's not. There's a lot of science. There's a lot of evidence. There's a lot of proof of what's happening in the brains of somebody when Anthony Robbins stands up in front of a room and everybody fucking starts crying. What is that? There's science there. There's study. It's real. And you can examine it. You can explore it. The world is such that we can learn anything. I'm just some fucking dork who used to wear makeup and eye makeup and nail polish and sing in a rock band. I'm sitting here right now. If you've come this far, you're watching me examine in detail Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather through the lens of Polynesian fucking navigators, the history of understanding how a fastball works, and two guys from a British pop band. And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Because you can learn anything. Anything can be learned. Anything can be studied. You can focus on anything and improve it. You can gather information, study, go down, deep, deep, deep down rabbit holes. And when you get to the bottom and you find there's nothing there, you're happy because you've eliminated a rabbit hole, but the trip was worth it. The skills that you learned in exploration help the next exploration. And that's who Floyd Mayweather is. And that's who Conor McGregor is. And that's what the fuck we're watching. And you know what else is interesting? It isn't just these guys. It's all of us. We're all involved in this. Some of you, again, I don't know how long I've been sitting here talking, but it's got to be close to an hour and a half. You're curious. Some of you are mad. Some of you are so happy. Some of you can't wait. Some of you just need to know. Some of you, this is all you're talking about. We're all involved in this. And it isn't some loudmouthed MMA guy trying to make $80 million who doesn't know how to box against another guy. It is a moment in time of deep historical significance, culturally, psychologically, physiologically, historically, everything. And we're all in it. All of us. We're all in this. And it's just such a privilege, such a pleasure. I talked about, and why am I talking about myself? Because this is my fucking podcast, okay? I talked about how this feels, and it's hard. You know, sometimes I don't talk to my wife for 10 hours because I'm so deep in this with my headphones on. It's difficult. But it's my life's work, and there's stuff here. There's things here of value, of deep value, not just to us, but fucking humanity. I know that sounds crazy, but what if the world could use a little more intuition? What if just a few of us who influence the influencers in whatever business you're in, could stop and go, wait a second. The way we think and the way we act and the way we rule out things and the way we react and all of this isn't how we have to be, and this isn't necessarily what it is to be human. It's a series of evolution steps and choices. What if one of you got that out of this weird conversation? Fuck, I got that out of this weird conversation. I'm different now because of this. And that's what things like this mean. That's what moments in time like this mean. There are times where we can examine who we are, what we are, and why we are. It's fucking beautiful. So next week we'll be back. I've already got a few other things that I'm going to spend 70 or 80 hours studying and digging into. Many of them will amount to nothing, but it won't be a waste of time. It never is. Don't think that trying something is a waste of time. Don't ever. It won't be. But some of it is going to be about us. Yes, it'll be about the fight. Well, as much about the fight as Polynesian navigation is about the fight. But it'll be about us too. Okay, thank you so much for hanging with me. And if you're here at the end, it's because you love what we're doing, and I appreciate that. Please, if you can, you help out a great deal if you support us on Patreon. It'll allow us to expand this study, maybe bring in some guests or go and explore deeper. It's patreon.com/Robin Black. $10 or $15 helps us immensely. But this is what I'm going to do forever. So, if you watch this more than Netflix, then double whatever your Netflix is. But I thank you. This is what I love to do. And it's what I do. Let me know your thoughts. And, thank you. Black out.